This orientation training will be on classroom active supervision.
Hello, my name is Elia Gracia. I am an education coordinator who has been with Niños for 9 years. In this presentation, you will gain knowledge and understanding on the importance of active supervision, procedures, routines, and how to keep children safe in the classroom. At the end of the presentation, please take the short quiz so you may gain credits for this training.
Please keep in mind the following questions that I'm going to read to you. You might want to write these down on a sheet of paper so that you can relate back to them at the end of this training. What does it mean to you when you hear classroom active supervision? When we say design a classroom for age appropriate, what comes to your mind? Classroom active supervision, what is it? What does it look like? Keeping children safe is a top priority for all Head Start and early Head Start programs. The Head Start program performance standards require that no child shall be left alone or unsupervised while under their care. Active supervision is the most effective strategy for creating a safe environment and preventing injuries in young children. Each program can keep children safe by teaching all educators how to look, listen, and engage.
Caring for our children, Standard 2.2.0.1, Methods of Supervision of Children. Active and positive supervision involves knowing each child's abilities, establishing clear and simple safety rules, being aware of and scanning for potential safety hazards, standing in a strategic position, scanning, play, activities, and circulating around the area, focusing on the positive rather than the negative to teach a child what is safe for the child and other children, and teaching children the appropriate and safe use of each piece of equipment.
Hello, and welcome to Leave No Child Unattended. Use active supervision to keep children safe. My name is Nancy Topping-Tailby, and I am a staff member at the Head Start National Center on Health. I'm joined today by Amanda Bryans, Director of the Education and Comprehensive Services Division at the Office of Head Start, to talk about strategies to make sure that no child enrolled in Head Start or Early Head Start is ever left unsupervised. We wish to acknowledge Ann Johnson from the Office of Head Start Region 7 and Tina Birkenscotter, the Executive Director of the Missouri Head Start Association, who previously worked with Amanda to coordinate Office of Head Start training on child supervision. The Office of Head Start, together with the Head Start National Center on Health, Early Head Start National Resource Center, the Head Start National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning, and the Head Start National Center on Program Management and Fiscal Operations, is hosting a week-long series of interactive webinars and online discussion on active supervision to help you learn more about effective ways to supervise the infants, toddlers, and preschool children in your care. The National Center on Health is pleased to provide this webinar to launch the Week on Active Supervision, and we hope that you will be able to participate in each of the scheduled events. If you had an opportunity to listen to the recorded remarks from Acting Office of Head Start Director Ann Lenahan, you know that improving child supervision is a major focus of the Office of Head Start. The Office of Head Start has worked with the Head Start National Centers to highlight the importance of intentional, focused, and constant supervision. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Amanda Bryans, Director of the Education and Comprehensive Services Division at the Office of Head Start. Amanda?
Thank you so much, Nancy. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you today, and I am really gratified by the amount of interest that we have in this webinar and the number of people who are on. The first thing I want to say is thank you for the work that you do every day on behalf of children and families throughout the United States of America. You have so many reasons to be proud. The second thing I want to say is that we don't think anyone leaves a child unattended on purpose. We think that it happens because human beings have imperfect memories. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how not smart you are. It doesn't matter how busy you are, how much you're multitasking, or how much you're not multitasking. It can happen to anybody. If you leave this webinar today with one thought, it should be that to recognize this can happen to me, it can happen to even the best staff in my program. We think once you get that, you really believe that, you will have traveled far down the path to making sure that it never happens again, because when you recognize that it happens to good people who care about kids and work hard, you recognize that you need to have a lot of what we call redundant systems in place. And I think you're going to learn a lot about this idea of active supervision, which is a really, really effective way to prevent this. I want to say to you that I ask everyone to imagine what you would feel like if you inadvertently left a child behind for a period of time. Imagine what it would feel like to be the child, to be by yourself, to realize you're alone. You know you're not where you're supposed to be. Your group is gone. You don't know where your mommy or your daddy is, and you don't know what's happening. Imagine what it would feel like if you needed to go to the bathroom and you waited as long as you could and you couldn't hold it anymore. Imagine what it would feel like to wonder if anybody is ever going to come and get you. You're little, you're 2 years old, you're 3 years old, you're all by yourself on a bus, or you're out in a street wandering because you walked away from your center, or you're on a playground, or even in a classroom for a shorter time. You're not where you're supposed to be. I think imagining that is part of what's necessary to, again, really putting the prevention in place that we need in order to avoid this. I think too often we see in notes about these incidents that the child was unharmed. And I think what we're going to talk about today is that when children get left, they're not unharmed, they're scared, they're often traumatized, and they often have fears that linger with them for a long time after one of these events. So I want you to feel like this is something that happens, but it is preventable. You're on the right path by participating in the webinar today. I hope that you can really participate actively. We're talking about active supervision of children. Let your mind really be free to think about incidents that have happened, what could have prevented it, what you're going to do next. And we will get to talk again at the end after Nancy provides you with more specifics about active supervision. Nancy?
Thanks, Amanda. As Amanda said, later in the webinar, she will answer some of your questions about child supervision. So please type your questions in the chat box at any time as you listen to today's webinar, and Amanda will answer as many questions as time allows. Today we will provide an introduction to active supervision, a child supervision technique that is used in child care and early education programs throughout the world. We will also show you the Keep Children Safe Using Active Supervision page on the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, where you can find resources from the Head Start National Centers to help you supervise the children in your care. And you will have an opportunity to participate in an Ask the Expert Q&A with Amanda at the end of the webinar. As you know, a child's safety depends on staff knowing where every child is at all times. This also means that staff inspect the indoor and outdoor environments the children use, remove any hazards, observe children closely, and respond quickly to prevent injury to a young child who is still learning how to judge what is safe to do. We are responsible for the safety of the children during the time they spend with us, including when they travel to and from our programs on a Head Start bus. Data from all regions tell us that children are more likely to be left alone when they ride on Head Start buses and during transitions. Supervising children can be challenging because there are multiple transitions throughout the course of the day. Active supervision can help you plan effective ways to supervise children as they move from one location to another within a Head Start center or family child care home, when they go outside for outdoor play or on a field trip, and when they arrive or leave the program at the end of the day on a Head Start bus or with their family. Supervision is essential to ensuring the health, safety, and well-being of children. It minimizes the risk of harm to children by preventing injuries, illness, and accidents. It promotes positive learning environments and experiences for children and their caregivers. Good supervision is critical to quality, and supervision is in everything you do. But supervision is much more than just watching the children. It involves all of your skills as a teacher and caregiver. And it's about using strategies and techniques that promote effective supervision practices that create a safe environment for children. Supervision is your responsibility and commitment to the families who have trusted you with their children. It is also your responsibility and commitment to the children who rely on you for guidance, nurturing, protection, and support. Active supervision offers effective strategies for staff to look, listen, and engage to prevent childhood injuries. It requires focused attention and intentional observation of children. When you use active supervision, you position yourself so that you can observe all of the children, watching, counting, and listening at all times, and you use your knowledge of each child's developmental abilities and anticipate what children will do. The best way to keep children safe is for teachers and caregivers to be actively engaged with children. This constant vigilance helps children learn safely. Although there's always some level of risk in any activity, staff who are trained in and always practice active supervision can prevent most injuries and make sure that no child is ever left unattended. The data show that the quality of adult supervision is directly linked to childhood injuries. Active supervision means having the right adult-child ratios and adults who are fully engaged and paying attention to the children in their care so they can quickly get to a child who needs assistance. Studies demonstrate that young children are more likely to get hurt when they are not adequately supervised by adults, and especially when they are out of arm's reach. Active supervision includes 6 basic strategies. First, you set up the environment. Then you position staff. You scan and count. You listen. You anticipate children's behavior. And you engage and redirect children as necessary. We'll discuss each strategy individually. Setting up the environment includes the layout as well as the selection of equipment and materials in the classroom or family child care home. Early childhood environments are not static environments. Once adults and children enter the room, the environment constantly changes. In order to keep the environment safe and secure when children are present, staff must monitor and maintain hazard-free spaces. The layout of the classroom or area where children play in family child care homes must allow the staff to see and hear children at all times. Centers are set up that do not interfere with each other and allow staff to observe multiple centers at once. This means that there are no blind spots where children can play that you cannot observe. The materials and equipment that children use are developmentally appropriate, and the furniture and toys are in good repair. In this picture, notice that the light toys, like the plastic dinosaurs, are kept on the top shelf. It's best to keep heavy toys on the bottom shelves in case a child drops them. Items are placed appropriately to allow room for floor time play away from walkways. Setting up the environment is especially important in mixed age groupings with young infants and mobile infants or toddlers. In order to create space for tummy time for young infants, designate separate areas for young infants away from areas for mobile infants and toddlers to engage in active play. Staff position themselves close to children, especially in infant settings. This is an essential element of infant-toddler caregiving. Repetitive systems for scanning and counting once young children become mobile can help you engage in responsive caregiving and support children's learning while keeping track of where children are at all times. Once children become mobile, it's important to be able to see and hear all the children and reach a child quickly if needed. while managing classroom or administrative tasks so that these responsibilities don't interfere with your ability to observe and effectively supervise the children. For example, you may position yourself closer to a child who's struggling with keeping her hands to herself because her language skills are still emerging. Or a newly mobile child is eager to use a climbing structure on the playground, so you will want to stay within arm's reach to prevent the child from falling. As discussed, a recent research study found that an adult's proximity to a child is one of the most effective ways to prevent injuries. So it's important to be intentional about where staff locate themselves in the classroom and on the playground in order to be able to observe all of the children. Staff need to scan and count children constantly so that they always know how many children there are and where they are. Since we know that children are frequently left unattended during transitions, staff need to be especially vigilant at these times. Scan and count frequently during transitions. Monitor attendance and use redundant systems in which you check and recheck to make sure that you can account for all of the children. Communicate frequently with the other staff on your team so that everyone knows where each child is. It can only take a moment when children are moving from one place to another for a child to wander off or be left behind. While scanning and counting provide visual cues in your environment, you also need to listen carefully. Sometimes a specific noise or even silence can indicate that there is a problem and someone may be in danger. Being alert means being able to determine what sounds may signal an indication of trouble, such as a child who's getting frustrated and may be more likely to hit or bite another child. A bell on the classroom door can alert you to a child who may run out of the room. Anticipating children's behaviors can help you prepare for how children will react to transitions and changes in daily routine, so you can determine which children may need more attention and extra support at any given time. Anticipating how to engage children in activities makes it easier to plan ahead for all possibilities. For example, if you know that some activities are likely to be popular, then you can set up the environment to encourage turn-taking by providing tickets for how many children can use a center at one time. You can also plan other activities that are engaging for children who are waiting their turn. You also anticipate children's behaviors based on their developmental level and the skills that they are working to master. For example, a young child with newly emerging language skills who's having trouble communicating may bite out of frustration and might need a little extra support. A staff member may decide to position herself closer to the child. You also recognize the sometimes more subtle signs that children are feeling ill or stressed, so you can provide additional support at any given time. Ultimately, there are times when children will need you to engage and redirect them. When you have close relationships with and know the children in your care, you can individualize for each child. Staff can quickly intervene prior to problems arising by promoting problem-solving skills, such as helping a child who's struggling with turn-taking to learn how to share with friends. In addition to supporting the child's development and learning needs, staff can decrease children's challenging behaviors by providing positive behavioral supports. You can find great examples of how to do this from the Center on the Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning, or CEFL, that has developed user-friendly training materials, videos, and print resources. You can access these materials from the CEFL website at Vanderbilt University, and related materials from the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning and the Early Head Start National Resource Center on the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center. Keep Children Safe using active supervision is a good place to learn about how to implement active supervision strategies. This new page on the ECLKC and the National Center on Health portal offers you resources about strategies to use with infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And it will also help you learn how you can enhance your management systems to support effective child supervision practices. The Head Start National Center on Health, the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning, the National Center on Program Management and Fiscal Operations, and the Early Head Start National Resource Center jointly developed this new page so you can find related resources from each center all in one page. This part of the page highlights active supervision resources from the National Center on Health. A good place to begin is to look at the active supervision fact sheet. Active Supervision at a Glance is an easy-to-use handout for you to share with staff and use in your agency-wide professional development training on active supervision. You can download Active Supervision at a Glance from the Keep Children Safe using Active Supervision page on the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center. The National Centers work together to create this active supervision poster. Our thanks to the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning that designed the poster, as well as Active Supervision at a Glance. You can also download the poster from the Keep Children Safe page on the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center. It's a great visual to hang in your centers or family child care homes and communicate to all staff that children's safety is everyone's responsibility. We encourage you to post it in all of your classrooms, your family child care homes, and socialization areas, just like you would display required posted policies. You can also share the poster with your policy council, governing body, and health services advisory committee, and with families during parent committee meetings and home-based socializations. Here are some resources recommended by the Early Head Start National Resource Center for actively supervising infants and toddlers, and by the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning for actively supervising preschool-aged children that you can find on the Keep Children Safe using Active Supervision page. The National Center for Program Management and Fiscal Operations recommends these selected resources to help programs engage governing body and policy council members, program leaders, and managers in understanding the role that they play in making sure that all of your program systems support effective child supervision. The National Centers have just released a new toolkit that will help you to find additional resources from each center that you can use to implement or enhance active supervision strategies in your program. Please share it widely with all staff in your program. The toolkit can also be downloaded from the Keep Children Safe using Active Supervision page. Now we're ready to respond to your questions. If you would like to ask a question and you haven't done so already, please type your question in the chat box now. Are you ready, Amanda?
I'm ready, Nancy.
So we'll answer as many questions as we can during today's webinar, and then we'll post answers to additional questions at a later date if we run out of time. So Amanda, let's start with a general question. What have you noticed as you've visited programs around the country about child supervision in Head Start and Early Head Start programs? Are there any examples of great successes that you can share with us?
Well, that's a really good question. I think there are a lot of examples, Nancy, and I don't want to spend much time talking about myself, but I worked for 10 years in a program, so I feel like I have a really realistic understanding of the challenges around how to do this well. We did have a case in the last year or two where a stranger tried to abduct a child from a Head Start center. The Head Start center had very well established protocol or policies around child release, and so the person who was kind of at the desk in the center said, you know, who can I see your ID? Who are you? And whereupon the person kept insisting that he was a relative and that he could take the child, and he knew the child's first and last name, but she said, nope, you're not on the child release, or you didn't show ID, no. And eventually the person left the center. The police were called. They found the person, and it was in fact an attempted stranger abduction of a child. The agency's procedures protected that child from from being hurt. And I think that what's really important is that the staff had the confidence that what they were doing was the right thing. Now, this person, he felt confident too, and he thought if he insisted enough that he knew the child's first and last name and he was a relative, that the staff member would yield. But the staff member knew what her job was, she knew what the policies were, and she refused, and very likely saved that child's life, and certainly the trauma of being abducted. So I think that's a great story. We've had also stories where a redundant safety system prevented a child from being left alone on a bus. It's notable that sometimes people take roll or count and get the wrong number or misidentify kids. So there was a case where, the driver in the monitor said, well, there were 17 kids that got on and 17 kids got off, but the teacher said, I was expecting all 18 today. I'm just going to take a double check. The bus was still in front of the center, and there was still an adult viewing, and the teacher got on the bus, walked to the back, and found her 18th child sleeping. In that case, the child was alone for less than a minute. There was still an adult looking at the bus, and they did not, didn't have any monitoring findings. But most importantly, the child had no experience of being left alone and was never at any risk. So it can be done. As I said in the beginning, I think the emphasis needs to be on this idea of, really, it's not just rote. It's not that you're always, somebody I think asked a question about how many times taking roll is too many, and that's a really good point. It is not great for kids to be constantly calling their names and requiring them to respond. If you do that too much, it becomes rote, and your brain will tune out their little saying here or I'm here or however they answer, and you will make a mistake. It's more important to use, I think, a variety of strategies, to count the kids yourself, to know all the kids' names, and make sure that you're kind of doing the things that prevent boredom from having you make a mistake.
Thanks, Amanda. So I'm thinking that I'm going to skip to a question about scanning and counting because you were talking about how many times it's okay to count. So here's a question about I scan and count all the time, but sometimes when we're on the playground with other classes and there are a lot of children playing together, it's so much harder to keep track of the children that I'm responsible for. What can I do to make sure that I'm counting the right kids?
Well, that's
what would you say about that one?
I think that's a terrific question, and I think that also plays into thinking about kind of overall management. One important thing is how many kids are actually on the playground, and is it too many? Not just in terms of the difficulty with counting and watching them all, but just we know that playgrounds are not as safe when there are very many kids using the same equipment. So you want to make sure your playground has the capacity for the number of children that are playing on it. And then you want to make sure that you have good staffing. So it's not a time to lighten up on ratios when you're out on the playground. You need to maintain the same ratios. And you may want to think about some zone supervision. You want to make sure that an adult has every part of the playground under observation, and that kids are safe. If there are areas of concern, maybe if there's a gate that's not latched, maybe there's a part of the playground where we had a playground where the fence got cut regularly. So if there's any kind of opening in the fence or place a child could get under, that you've got staff placed around that. And then I think you still have to, if you've been given specific responsibility for 10 children, you need to be really checking in to make sure those 10 children, you know where they are and what they're doing. But again, I would definitely go to a zone system if you've got a large playground with lots of kids, and make sure that all of the areas are under observation. And then certainly before you leave the playground, you assemble your group and make sure that you've got everybody.
So Amanda, you didn't talk about name-to-face counts. Did you want to mention that, or do you have some thoughts about that?
That's a critical aspect of the whole kind of a fundamental of active supervision, that you really know the children who you're working with, and that you know them by name and a little bit by personality, and that will help you, again, do the counting in your head. It's not a matter of constantly relying on roll call, but that you are going through, I've got these 10 names. These are the kids I'm responsible for. If you need to write them down, you've got them on a little 3x5 card, and you're making sure that those children are there. I would not hesitate to use name tags early in the year, or if you have a substitute, I think that can really help make sure that children are safer.
So we have so many questions coming in. They're fabulous questions. So we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but we will follow up. So let's see if we can answer one last one about transitions, because we've talked a lot about transitions being times when children are more vulnerable. So here's one. I know we need to be especially vigilant during transitions, but what exactly should teachers be doing during transitions? Should they be doing something different or doing what they always do, just doing it more often?
Oh, that's another terrific question. I think you're right. Transitions are vulnerable times. We know that a lot of children are inadvertently left when groups are moving from one place to another, or going on field trips, or any kind of going down to a different room for the cafeteria. I think you use some of the strategies I think, again, really knowing the children you're working with. I think I'm trying to get to multiple questions in one. I think there was another question about, well, should I engage the children in helping count? And I would say you're not going to rely on a child's count as the, authoritative, but if you have a child who is more likely to be distracted, or perhaps to leave, or is experiencing a lot of separation anxiety or whatever, that you make them have, you include them, you give them a job that keeps them close to you and keeps them engaged during the transition to reduce the chance that they might wander. And you use your face-to-name recognition. I think, again, the positioning of adults is really important. I've seen cases where one teacher assumes that if they get toward the front of a group of children, the other teacher will automatically know that she or he is supposed to stay at the rear. Be clear. Don't hesitate to be explicit. Say, I'm taking the front, you stay in the back, meaning you're the last person. Like, you don't let 3 or 4 kids get behind you, but be really explicit around what those expectations are so that you're able to keep your group together as you transition.
Thanks, Amanda. So I'm sorry, but we are running out of time, so I'm going to have to shut down the questions at this particular point. And I'm sorry that we weren't able to get to more of them. So a quick plug, because I know we're close to the end of our time, that we have here a schedule for the rest of the week, and we encourage you to please join some of these other activities that we've planned. Tomorrow, Tuesday, March 3rd, staff from the Early Head Start National Resource Center will talk specifically about how to apply the concepts of active supervision to the many settings in which you serve infants and toddlers. Angie Godfrey, the infant toddler specialist at the Office of Head Start, will moderate this event, which will also include a live Q&A and feature resources from the Early Head Start National Resource Center. On Wednesday, March 4th, the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning will explore their in-service suites through the lens of active supervision in preschool environments. There will also be a Q&A with Jamie Sheen from the Office of Head Start and Kristen Ainsley, host of Teacher Time. On Thursday, March 5th, the National Center on Program Management and Fiscal Operations will offer a webinar highlighting resources from their center that will help you look at safety from a systems perspective and how program leaders can set the stage for developing a culture of safety. There will also be remarks by David Jones from the Office of Head Start. And finally, on Friday, March 6th, join Marco Beltran from the Office of Head Start, who will share how 2 Region 9 grantees, CETA and Contra Costa, have implemented the Head Start Program Performance Standard on Child Supervision and how they use redundant systems to make sure all children are accounted for in the classroom and on the playground. So please join us throughout the rest of the week so that you can strengthen your child supervision practices to make sure that no child enrolled in your program is left unattended.
Thank you, everybody, and our heartfelt thanks.
You can contact us to ask questions, share comments, and reflect on your successes and your challenges as well. And I join Amanda in thanking you and expressing our heartfelt thanks. If you want to email us, please email our center at the address here and type the words active supervision in the subject line. We're about to conclude our webinar, but when the webinar ends, there will be a survey poll that can be taken immediately. It will also contain instructions on how to share the link with everyone who watched the webinar with you. Each person who would like a certificate must complete a survey in order to receive one. This concludes our webinar. On behalf of the Office of Head Start, I join Amanda and the National Center on Health in thanking you for joining us. Bye-bye.
The following 6 strategies work together to create an effective approach to child supervision. First, you set up the environment. Second, position staff. Third, scan and count. Fourth, listen. Fifth, anticipate children's behavior. And sixth, engage and redirect.
The following learning centers are for you to keep in mind when you're setting up your classroom. The first one we have is ABC Center, Language and Literacy, Investigation Laboratory, Science Center, Sensory Table, Math Center, Fine Motor Center, Creativity Station, Construction Zone, Pretend and Learn, Writer's Corner, Library and Listening Center, Technology Center, which is your computer area, and Safe Place.
The following video pertains to designing the classroom environment and how to maximize your learning time in the classroom.
Hello, and welcome to this short presentation on managing the classroom, designing environments. This presentation will provide an opportunity to think about the way the classroom space is organized, and how to optimize children's participation in the classroom spaces, how to make them areas for learning. The House framework illustrates the important practices that support school readiness for all children. The foundation of the House and the foundational teaching practices are effective and engaging interactions and environments. This module on designing environments fits into the foundation of our House. The other parts of the House are the pillars: research-based curricula and teaching practices, and ongoing child assessment, and the roof, highly individualized teaching and learning. Designing an effective and engaging classroom environment takes careful thought and planning. But it's important. A well-organized classroom that is interesting, orderly, and attractive contributes to children's participation and engagement with the learning materials and activities. This engagement, in turn, contributes to children's learning. It's all a part of helping children achieve school readiness and success in school and beyond. Let's look at it from a child's perspective. We want children to feel safe and comfortable in the classroom. We want them to be interested in the learning activities and to take full advantage of being at school, and take full advantage of the activities you've planned and the materials you've selected. It can be helpful to get down at a child's level and take a look at the classroom. Does it feel welcoming and inviting? Is there enough room to move, make choices, and stay involved with a toy or activity or project? And does the room help the child know what to do and what's expected? There are all sorts of classrooms. They differ by size and shape, amount of light and wall space, placement of sinks and counters, and amount of storage. Figuring out how to design the physical space and to maximize children's interactions within the space will take some time. Make a floor plan. Move things around. Take a look at other classrooms and see what works. Here are a few things to think about when designing your space and making it as workable as possible. Think about the number of interest areas or centers that you want or need for the group of children. Arrange the space so that noisy areas are separated from quiet areas. Locate centers next to needed storage or equipment. Use furniture or other items to provide boundaries. But make sure that the adults can see all of the areas of the room. Make a space for the whole class to gather as well as areas for smaller groups to work and play. Think about traffic patterns. Plan so that children can move easily from space to space, but also discourage running and wandering. It will take some time and creativity to make it all work. The learning materials, toys, and other objects and equipment are also important. Once again, it takes careful thinking and planning to make the right selections. Ideally, all of the materials contained in a center or an interest area will support children's development and learning. So, think about how the materials relate to lesson plans and learning goals. Make sure they are culturally relevant and meaningful to children's lives. Provide sufficient variety and quantity, but not so much as to overwhelm the children. And plan for integration of learning across domains, as well as what you'll need to individualize for the children in your group. We include one more feature of the environment when designing the environment for maximum learning. Teachers want to be intentional about how they group children. whether it's a decision made in the moment or as part of lesson planning. Match the size of the group with the purpose of the activity. Think about the children who will be in the group. Young children need opportunities to participate and learn with the whole group, smaller groups, and they will thrive with a bit of one-on-one time with an adult. The purpose of this presentation was to provide an overview of the important aspects of designing and engaging an effective early learning environment. Some of those aspects are the physical space itself, the content such as toys, materials, and other objects, and the ways that children are organized and grouped to encourage their meaningful participation and to maximize learning opportunities. You can learn more about designing your learning environment in our tips and tools and helpful resources that accompany this presentation. See examples and try out different ways to organize your own classroom. Thank you for listening.
This video will give you more an idea of how listening and anticipating children's behavior helps you out in the classroom by engaging and redirecting.
Hello, and welcome to this short module on redirecting behavior. Redirecting behavior is a proactive method for dealing with challenging behavior. It maximizes a child's engagement in learning by giving the child alternatives to a behavior that teachers consider problematic. Redirecting behavior is one in a series of in-service suites on behavior guidance. This is the House framework. The National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning uses this framework to show the necessary elements of effective teaching that support school readiness for all children. These elements are a solid foundation of effective interactions and environments, the pillars that remind us of the importance of a research-based curriculum and ongoing child assessment, and the roof that represents highly individualized teaching and learning. Our module on redirecting behavior is part of the foundation of the house. Now, let's see what redirecting behavior looks like and learn different ways to use this method in preschool classrooms. Redirecting behavior helps to increase a child's engagement in learning by preventing problem behavior in the first place and by avoiding the escalation of problematic or challenging behavior. That means teachers use redirecting before the behavior gets out of hand. Redirecting behavior consists of simple instructions and simple cues that teachers can easily embed into the ongoing activities and routines of the day. Teachers can use redirecting behavior along with classroom rules and clear expectations to help maintain a well-organized and productive learning environment. Let's look at 4 types of redirecting. Teachers can redirect verbally, physically, with a cue, or by redirecting the child's attention. Regardless of the type of redirection, it is used when the teacher notices that the child's attention is flagging, or the teacher notices that the child is on the verge of losing control or showing frustration in a way that teachers consider problematic. Redirection happens before the problem behavior. Verbal. The teacher gives a simple instruction that distracts the child from the challenging behavior and guides the child to a more appropriate behavior. The teacher might say, "Let's see if we can find another shiny car," or "I need a helper with these carpet squares. Can you help me?"
Hey, let's come spray down our window, my friend. Oh man, our window's looking great. Nice and clean.
Physical. The teacher gives a simple instruction and uses a gentle touch to prevent the child's challenging behavior. The gentle touch interrupts the child's behavior, and in that pause, the teacher guides the child to a more appropriate behavior.
Can he look up? Let's wait until she answers our question. Ask her again. Can he see them? Oh, thank you. That was very nice of you.
With a cue, the teacher pairs a visual cue, like a picture or a gesture, with the instruction to prevent the child's challenging behavior and guide the child to an alternative.
Here, go like this, and he'll come land. Watch this. Land on the finger. Ooh, ooh, thank you.
Sometimes, a teacher can predict difficult situations, and so she has pictures already prepared. With attention. The 4th type of redirecting involves another child who is nearby and who is playing or talking appropriately. The teacher draws the attention of the child on the verge of a challenging behavior to the child who is engaged. This type of redirecting is sometimes called proximal attention.
So let's see who is ready to help us today. Oh, I see he's sitting really nice and quiet. He's trying his best. So I see him start with the letter D. Who is D? Daryl, thank you so much.
Redirecting behavior is a positive and proactive method for dealing with challenging behavior. It can be a way to prevent the behavior or interrupt the behavior before it escalates. By guiding the child to an alternative and more appropriate behavior, the teacher is also helping the child gain some self-control. In this module, we looked at 4 ways to use redirection: verbally, physically, with a cue, or with proximal attention. Learn more about this method of behavioral guidance in our longer in-service suite. Check out the tips for teachers, tools for supervisors, and other resources to help learn to use these methods in your classroom. Thank you.
I want to go over some recommendations for zoning and maximizing time. For teacher assistants, the recommendation is that when you're directing children out to the playground, you are the one leading the classroom out, and the teacher is at the end of the line. When you're directing the children back into the building from the outdoor play, it's the same thing. The teacher assistant will be directing the students back into the classroom. And always keep in mind that you want to keep children that have any type of disabilities close by in order to make sure that you're securing their safety in case of an emergency, that you have to get up and get the children out of the classroom from the building. You have those children very close by. So now let's go ahead and move on to the video.
Hello, and welcome to this short presentation on zoning, staffing to maximize learning. The National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning uses the House framework to organize our thinking about effective practices to support school readiness for all children. In this presentation, you'll learn about a foundational practice that we call zoning. It will help you achieve a well-organized classroom. Zoning is a practice used to organize the classroom staff by providing them with specific roles and duties throughout the day. During every classroom activity and during the transitions between activities, each adult in the classroom is assigned to an area of the classroom and has a set of responsibilities to fulfill. Here is a map of a classroom that shows what zoning might look like. In this classroom, there are 3 adults, a teacher and 2 assistants. During the classroom's free choice or learning center time, each adult is assigned to an area or a zone. One adult is assigned to Zone 1, the art area and the math and science table. This teacher remains in this general area and helps support children as they participate in art, math, and science activities. Another adult is assigned to Zone 2, the block area and the sand and water table. And a third adult is assigned to Zone 3, the dramatic play area and the library corner. This is just one example. Of course, the zones will change based on the number of available adults and the layout of your classroom. But notice that the adults remain in their zone and interact with children and guide their learning. When teachers plan how to use zoning in their classrooms, it can be helpful to use a chart such as this to help keep track of who is doing what. In this chart, the left-hand column lists the schedule of activities for the day. The top row will contain the names of the teachers, assistants, and volunteers. Then, in the cells of the chart, you'll see that each staff member has an assignment. This chart helps the classroom team organize their whole day. Look at the first row. It's arrival time. Each staff person has planned responsibilities. Person A greets the parents and children. Person B helps the children put away their backpacks and their coats. And Person C organizes and gets ready for breakfast. Then, in the following row, at breakfast time, each staff person is assigned to a breakfast table. The chart continues with designated roles and responsibilities. In the bottom row, we see its learning center or free playtime, and each teacher is assigned to a zone or area of the classroom. There are a number of benefits to using zoning. Here are a few. Zoning means that teachers are available to interact with children, and the children can be more engaged in learning activities. Zoning also increases staff efficiency because everyone knows where they need to be. Zoning helps to increase confidence in staff members. They know what's expected of them. They can see that they have an important role in the classroom. And zoning frees up time so that staff members can communicate more easily with each other and with the children. To learn more about staffing to maximize learning, see the National Center on Quality Teaching and Learning's additional resources on zoning.
In the following slides, I will be going over different scenarios for the different types of classroom strategies. Scenario number 1, classroom environment. Amy and Eva have agreed on a supervision plan for the children they will observe and are always counting the children in the areas closest to them, occasionally raising their fingers to show each other how many children are close to them. This helps them keep track of where the children are and to make sure no one is missing. If one child moves to a different area of the playground, they signal each other so that they are both aware of the child's change in location. Scenario number 2, staffing positioning. Amy and Eva have taken their class of 3-year-olds out to the playground for outdoor playtime. The 15-foot square playground has a plastic climber, a water sand table, and a swing set. The children scatter through the playground to various areas. Some prefer the climber, while others like the swings. Many of the children play with the sand table because it is new. Emma and Eva stand at opposite corners of the playground to be able to move quickly to a child who might need assistance. Scenario number 3, scan and count. When all the children are in line, both Amy and Eva count them again. They scan the playground to make sure everyone is in place, then move the children back into the classroom. They also listen to be sure that they do not hear any of the children still on the playground. Eva heads the line and Amy takes the back end, holding Jack's hand. Scenario number 4, listen. Amy has noticed that Rose loves to play in the sand table. She hears children scolding each other and notices that Rose throws the toys without looking. As Amy sees Brenda and Jack playing at the sand table, Amy stands behind Rose and suggests she put the toy back in the basket when she is done with it. By remaining close, she is also able to redirect Sam, who has never seen a sand table before and throws sand at his classmates. Scenario number 5, anticipate children's behavior. Michael has been experimenting with some of the climbing equipment and is trying to jump off the 3rd step into the ground. While he is able to do this, some of the other children whose motor skills are not as advanced also try to do this. To help them build these skills, Eva stands close to the steps on the climbing structure. She offers a hand or suggests a lower step to those who are not developmentally ready. Scenario number 6, engage and redirect. Amy and Eva signal to each other 5 minutes before playtime is over. Then tell the children they have 5 minutes left to play. When the children have 1 minute left, Amy begins to hand out colors that match color squares they have painted on the ground. She asks Jack, a child who has trouble coming inside from playtime, to help her. When the children are handed a colored circle, they move to stand on the colored spot on the playground. As the children move to the line, Amy guides them to the right spot. Other cautionary measures for you to keep in mind. Staff should avoid carrying out activities that will distract them from supervision, such as administrative tasks or speaking for long periods with other adults in the room or outdoor activities. And this is why we make the recommendations to always disperse yourself either in the classroom or in the outdoor activities. Even when an educator is directly involved in an activity with an individual child or group of children, he or she should still regularly be looking around the room or outdoor play area to ensure that all children are appropriately engaged. You want to ensure that there is a mix of activities to allow for appropriate supervision and to ensure that staff resources are not overstretched. Toileting. Be vigilant in monitoring when children go to and return from the bathroom. Visit the toilet area if children have not returned within a reasonable period of time. And this is why we make the recommendation to always take children between 3 to 4 at a time. Do not mix match. You always want to stick to all girls or all boys. Drop off and pick up times. New children, you want to greet all children when they arrive, letting them know how happy you are to see them. Help those who need special attention to adjust. Acknowledge each child's departure. Transportation and trips. Confirm all children are present before beginning the travel. Extra attention is required when trips are made.
Under the child-staff ratio, I want to go over the following. There will always be a minimum of 2 staff supervising children in the classroom and during outdoor play. The ratio must never fall below 2 staff per classroom, even when taking children on a walk or on a field trip in an enclosed, controlled area. Note, this ratio specifically clarifies that only program staff will be considered the supervising adults when children are on the playground. Continuation of child-staff ratio. We want to increase the ratio of adults to children, but they will at no time replace the Head Start staff to child ratio, which is 1 to 10 for your 4-year-olds, 1 to 8 for your 3-year-olds, and 1 to 4 for your early Head Start. However, if the children are taking on a field trip where other children and adults who are not from the Head Start Center, the ratio is 1 to 8 for your 4-year-olds, 1 to 6 for your 3-year-olds. It is only during field trips may parents and volunteers be included in the staff-child ratio, but keep in mind that the amount of children will be reduced. We now move on to purposeful talk. Teaching and center staff need to engage in conversations that support classroom coordination and teaching and learning. It is important that you note that during exchanging information that those involved in the conversation have a clear understanding of the information that is being shared. For example, if a teacher A needs to leave the classroom to get a broom from the kitchen, not only does she need to let the other teaching staff member know, but the teacher A must make sure the other teaching staff member heard she was leaving by both teaching staff members acknowledging the verbal exchange. Another example could be when a teacher aide takes a child to the restroom. The teacher aide must let the other teaching staff member know who she is taking away or bringing back and give the number of children that remain with that teaching staff member. We now move on to conducting assessment and screening of children. Teaching staff also need to know about each child's developmental level and progress. We know that. Therefore, it is necessary to assess the children on an ongoing basis. Teaching staff need to assess children during learning center time in the morning and in the afternoon. Keep in mind, these are the only times during your day that you will be allowed to assess your children. Teaching staff may also schedule assessment at the end of the day during dismissal activities. Usually a good timing would be after snack time, which is after 2:30. However, it is important to note that all children must always be visibly supervised at all times. We now move on to diapering. There are about 6 safety tips to follow. Number 1, actively supervise. Number 2, you want to use a checklist to create a safe environment for your children. Tip number 3, you always want to make sure you use safety devices. Safety tip number 4, you want to make sure that windows are safe. Safety tip number 5, you want to be aware of and keep all poisons out of children's reach. Make sure that anything that's not safe for children, you keep it in a stored, locked area. Tip number 6, you want to prepare for emergencies. You want to make sure that you have an emergency prepared plan current. Feeding. We have 3 tips to follow. You want to make sure that when you're feeding your children, you check bottle temperatures. Tip number 2, position children to eat safely. Tip number 3, you want to choose developmentally appropriate foods and check the temperature at all times before you start feeding the children. Sleeping. When it comes to sleeping, we have 2 tips to follow. Number 1, you want to make sure that you use safe cribs. You check the cribs for anything around it, surroundings. Tip number 2, you want to make sure you use safe sleep practices. When playing, we want to keep in mind we have the following tips to follow. You want to make sure you use toys, equipment, and materials that have no small parts and are safe for young infants. Safe tip number 2, you want to provide safe outdoor play environments. When talking to little ones, 0 to 12 months, you want to make sure you hold infants 9 inches to 14 inches from your face for the first 2 months. You want to speak often to them. You want to speak slowly and clearly. You want to make sure you use a high-pitched sing-song voice. And you want to play with language, recite rhymes, and you want to whisper. When communicating and speaking with infants, you want to use consistent sounds, gestures, or words to communicate for a variety of purposes. They start to understand and begin to use oral language for conversation and communication. They develop language skills in structured language contexts such as through books, finger plays, singing, storytelling, and reenacting. When it comes to communicating and speaking with toddlers, you want to use consistent sounds, gestures, or words to communicate for a variety of purposes. They imitate sounds, gestures, signs, or words. They understand and begin to use oral language for conversation and communication. They develop language skills in structured language contexts such as through books, finger plays, singing, storytelling, and reenacting. They also develop communication skills for increasingly complex purposes such as negotiating, predicting, reasoning, and guessing. We now have communicating and speaking with 3-year-olds. Child varies the amount of information provided to meet the demands of the situations. They understand and follow and use appropriate social and conversational rules. Children express themselves increasingly long, detailed, and sophisticated ways. Minimum standards health routines. 746.3417. When must children wash their hands? Children must wash their hands at a medium-high level. Before eating, before playing in a water play table, after toileting or having a diaper changed, after outdoor activities. This is a very important one. After playing in sand, after feeding or touching animal, and any other time that the caregiver has reason to believe the child has come in contact with substances that could be harmful to the child. It is the best practice to require all children to wash their hands immediately upon entering a child care center or the child's first room. It is also a best practice to require all parents visiting the center to wash their hands upon entering the center or the child's room. Studies have shown an increase in overall health in a center when programs eliminate the transmission of germs from the home environment to the center by requiring hand hygiene for all entering the center. Make sure that your children wash their hands right after outdoor activities. Direct children straight into washing area, then transition them into circle time, which is your carpet, or into your table, whatever transition activity you have going on after your outdoor activity. It is during meal times, the only time teachers can take children in small groups to conduct health routines, either by 3 or 4 at a time. So I want to reinforce this very much. It is the only time that a teacher aide is allowed to take children for health routines. And it is only 3 or 4 at a time, and it's either 3 boys or 3 girls. You cannot mix match. So please, please make sure you understand this. Something to remember, keeping children safe is a top priority for all Head Start and Early Head Start programs. The Head Start program performance standards require that no child shall be left alone or unsupervised while under your care. This includes daily routines, such as sleeping. You want to make sure that while the child is sleeping, the child is not rolled out of the mat, that the child is covered, that if the child is coughing, you attend to the child's need right away. While the child is eating, or while you're changing the diapers on a child, that you don't leave the children unattended. Remember, supervision starts the minute the parent signs their child into your classroom. Infants, toddlers, and preschoolers must always be directly supervised or using the bathroom. Teachers set up the environment so that they can always supervise children at all times. We now move on to our last part of the training, which is our quiz. I'm going to be going over the questions with you. Let's start with number 1. Playground is the only area that needs classroom active supervision. True or false? False. Playground is not the only area that needs classroom active supervision. Children should always be within sight or hearing. True or false? If you answer true, you are correct. There are 6 safety tips to supervise infants and toddler children. True or false? If you answer true, you are correct. Please make sure that you do finish the quiz and turn in all the information so that you can go ahead and get credit for this training. I would like to share a video with you, something just for you to reflect and make a difference.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class. Because I am the best teacher and you are the best students, they put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, minus 18 sucks all the life out of you. Plus 2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Teaching can be one of the most rewarding professions, but it can also be one of the most draining if you don't take steps into ensuring your self-care. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 tips on how you can make sure that you are pouring into yourself before you pour into your students. Welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle Griffo, and I am so excited you're here. On my channel, I like to share my 11 years of teaching experience with you, as well as all things fashion, lifestyle, and lipstick. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to my channel. You do that by clicking the subscribe button down below, and then every time you hop on a YouTube, you're notified of my newest video. Today, I'm going to share with you 10 ways on how you can make sure that you are taking care of yourself before you take care of your students. Number 1, start your day with a beverage that you enjoy on your way to work. You can make coffee at home, run through Starbucks, drink tea, whatever is your favorite thing to get you out of bed and know that you get some sort of reward on the way to work. It's simple, but it really helps. Number 2, make sure you have boundaries on how much you work. If you're a teacher, you're probably passionate and driven, and you want to make sure you pour into your students' lives. But you also need to make sure that you can stop and take time for yourself. Otherwise, you'll be working around the clock. A couple ideas on how to make sure you set up boundaries for yourself is pick a couple of days you're going to stay late throughout the week, and then make sure you leave at a reasonable hour the other days. Also, I like to make sure on Saturday and Sunday I take one of those days off completely. That includes browsing Pinterest for ideas for my classroom, prepping. All things teaching are put on pause one day a week. That really makes sure that I can invest in myself as a human being and take my teaching hat off for a day. Number 3, try to rest during your lunch break.
On the days I found myself working straight through lunch, the end of the day is here, and all of a sudden I am just exhausted and spent. Versus the days that I actually take a lunch break, I find that when the end of the school day comes, I still have more to give. So what I like to do is I spend my lunch break relaxing, actually eating, maybe going for a little walk outside, leaving campus, getting lunch with a coworker, spending time catching up on text, personal emails, something that involves fueling myself as a person. Then, parts of my lunch break, or some days you can't avoid it, you have to prep or work a little bit during lunch. But it's really important to take time for yourself every day during the school day on one of your breaks. Number 4 is use your sick days and mental health days. Right off the bat, when I started as a teacher, I got this impression that I should feel guilty for having a sub or that I weren't owed those days. Those days are written in your contract to where you should be able to take them for yourself if you're not feeling well mentally or physically. Don't feel bad or guilty. Your students will survive, the school will survive without you there, and things will go on. A thank you note goes a long way. So if another teacher or a staff member has to make up and sub for you while you're gone, take that day, do not feel guilty, but write a thank you note after telling how much you appreciated it. Because there are going to be days where you have to step and pick up the slack from someone else, but that shouldn't stop you from taking days that you need. Number 5 is find a bestie you can connect with at work. It makes the day so much more enjoyable when you have peers at work that you look forward to see. That can be one person, it can be the whole staff. I know it's hard entering a new school or even a new grade level and kind of feeling like you're a lone wolf, but pour in and try to find and make connections with people on campus. It doesn't have to be your grade level. That way, you feel a sense of community when you're at work, and it just makes it more meaningful. Number 6 is to find a teacher BFF that's a non-coworker. So that means someone that's in the profession. They are a teacher, but they don't work with you at school. That way, you can vent to them and pick their brain about topics that are happening on your campus, but you don't have to worry about any gossip starting on your behalf. It's a safe way to ensure that you are heard and listened to, but you don't have to worry about rumors being spread. I've found that friends are great, but a teacher friend goes a long way because they understand what you're going through. The teaching profession is crazy. You are a professional shaping young minds, but you're also dealing with these really interesting scenarios of raising children. So those two combined, really only a fellow teacher can really understand. Okay, number 7 is kind of personal to me, and I've just noticed I feel better when I make time to actually go outside during the day. As a teacher, your classroom's inside. Depending on the building, the hallway might be inside, and I found that the days where I literally am inside from the beginning of the day until the end, I kind of crave sunshine. So what I do is I try to walk a little bit further away to a copy machine or to a restroom so I can get outside and feel the sunshine. I try to look at those moments where I have to do outside duty, either after school or during recess or something, being outside on the playground with the kids. I am focused, I am engaged, but I also am secretly just soaking up the sunshine. Number 8, clean your desk at the end of the day. Some teachers don't have desks, but there's probably an area in your classroom that you consider yours, and try to make it as tidy as you can before you leave. There's been days where it's been so hard and my classroom is in disarray and I'm not ready for the next day, but I tidy up my workspace so I can enter the next morning and feel fresh. I feel like number 9 is really important and often missed, and that's utilize your drive home. Whatever you need to decompress, consider that drive home your sacred space. Granted, you might have kids in the car with you, but that's another thing. How I like to spend my time in the car after a workday is in complete silence. All day long, I've either been talking to, listening, talking at, talking with, and it's nice to just drive home with the windows down in utter silence. I know some of my peers like to listen to podcasts, like to talk on the phone. like to listen to music, whatever you need to do to feel like you can decompress, do that. Number 10 is utilize/avoid social media. Social media is an amazing resource to actually see inside other classrooms, to get inspiration, to be encouraged, to actually have teaching resources for your classroom. It can be a great tool. On the other hand, it can also be an area where you can feel lesser than or comparing yourself to another teacher. If you feel like that's starting to happen, I would suggest pause, take a break, write down some ideas of why you're an amazing teacher, and then re-enter social media once you can kind of get your head in a good spot. I'd have to do that all the time. Don't feel bad about it, but I would pay attention to when that's starting to happen to take a break. Okay, now I have a question for you. How do you preserve yourself as a teacher? Can you please drop it down in the comments below? I want to hear, and I want everyone else to be able to see how you take care of yourself. I really want my channel to be a place where we can collaborate and talk together and learn from each other. And it starts right here with you sharing how you preserve yourself as a teacher. You guys, thank you for watching my video. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next video. I can't wait to see you then.
I leave you with some resources that will help you in your classroom. The first one is Dr. Jean, and she's got some really good activities that you can use in your classroom. She's got the handshake, attention getters, and morning greetings. Please, you're welcome to go into these links and get as many as resources you want to use for your classroom. Thank you for being part of this training. I hope that all the information that was shared to you today will help you and give you a better understanding of what classroom active supervision is and how you can go back into your classroom and implement it for children's safety and yours as well.